Brielle Harmon spent more on her Everest permit than most people earn in 5 years, and her only prior training was a Pilates class she quit after 3 sessions. She showed up to base camp with a ring light, a brand deal, and zero idea that she was about to become another body on the mountain. But what did her Sherpa see in her eyes? At 27,000 feet, that made him later say it was the most terrifying moment of his entire career. Welcome to Alpine Finale, where we unravel the most disastrous events in history. If you want to support the channel, consider subscribing and liking this video. When rescuers finally reached her body at 27,200 feet, her GoPro was still recording. The battery had somehow survived 31 hours in winds of minus 40 degrees. What it captured in those final 22 minutes, Brielle Harmon alone, oxygen mask dangling, arguing with no one, waving her hand at the Hillary step like she was dismissing a waiter, would later be shown at expedition safety briefings across Nepal. But to understand how a 44-year-old HR director from Orange County ended up alone near the top of the world with a dead radio and a failing mind, we need to go back to the beginning. Brielle Harmon was not a climber. She was a content creator who had decided to become one. She had 180,000 Instagram followers, a partnership with a supplement brand, and an idea that Everest would be the post that changed everything. She had completed one high-altitude climb, Kilimanjaro, on the beginner route, with a guided group that included 2 teenagers. She had done Pilates for 11 months, SoulCycle 3 times a week, and a cold plunge every morning. In her mind, that was enough. In the spring of 2023, she wired $320,000 to a Kathmandu-based expedition company called Summit Prestige Expeditions and booked their flagship, full-service summit package. Private tent, dedicated Sherpa, satellite phone, champagne at base camp, everything except experience. Her assigned Sherpa was Dorje Tamang, a 38-year-old from Solukhumbu who had summited Everest 11 times. He noticed the problem during the very first acclimatization rotation to Camp 1. Brielle moved slowly, stopped often, and complained that the altitude headache meant her supplement stack was not working. Dorje later told investigators that she asked if there was a faster route and that he had thought she was joking. He said she was not joking. The warning signs stacked up quietly. During the Lobuche acclimatization climb, the expedition medic recorded her blood oxygen saturation at 81%, borderline for a safe summit attempt. The finding was flagged in her medical file. Summit Prestige reviewed it, noted it, and cleared her anyway. A $320,000 booking is not easy to turn away. By the time the weather window opened in mid-May, Brielle had posted 47 times from base camp. She had 2.3 million views on a reel of herself doing yoga in front of the Khumbu Icefall. Her follower count had jumped to 290,000. She told her climbing partner, a retired firefighter named Greg Mullen, that she could feel the summit calling her. Greg later said that he had tried to tell her that feeling was just hypoxia and that she laughed and called him negative. On the morning of May 17th, Brielle Harmon clipped into the fixed lines above Camp 3 and began moving toward the death zone. The sky above the South Col was clear and cold and completely still. It would not stay that way. The first sign came at 27,000 feet, just below the balcony. Dorje checked his watch and then checked the sky. The clear morning had turned the color of dirty steel. A lenticular cloud was forming over the summit pyramid, the kind that Sherpa guides call the mountain's hat, the kind that means turn around right now. He told Brielle to stop. She kept climbing. By 10:40 in the morning, the wind had gone from calm to 40 miles per hour in under 20 minutes. That is not unusual on Everest. What was unusual was the speed. Dorje radioed base camp and received a weather update that made his stomach drop. A secondary pressure system had moved in 6 hours ahead of the forecast. The window was not closing. It was already closed. Dorje later told the investigation team that he grabbed her arm and said, "We go down now." She pulled away from him and said she did not pay $320,000 to go down. Brielle unclipped from Dorje's rope and moved toward the Hillary step alone. That single decision ended everything. Within 10 minutes, the visibility dropped to less than 4 meters. She could not see the fixed line. She swept her hand through the blowing snow, trying to find the rope, and found nothing. She was navigating blind at 27,400 feet with no partner and no anchor. Then her radio died. The cold had drained the battery in under 2 hours. She reached for her satellite phone and found the screen black and frozen solid. At base camp, operators were trying to reach her every 3 minutes. The log shows 14 unanswered calls between 11:02 and 11:47 in the morning. She found the fixed line again by accident, grabbing it as she stumbled sideways on a sheet of black ice near the south summit. But her fingers could no longer feel it. The first stage of frostbite had already begun in both hands. She could see the rope but could not grip it properly. She began moving downward by feel, pressing her body against the mountain face, breathing in thin gasps that tasted like metal and ice. She did not see the bergschrund until she was already falling into it. The crevasse was narrow, no more than 1 meter wide, but she dropped nearly 6 meters before her left leg slammed into an ice ledge and stopped her fall. The crack of the impact echoed upward. She screamed once. Then the wind took the sound away completely. Her left femur was fractured. She could not stand. The temperature at that elevation was -38 degrees and dropping. A climber descending from the summit that day recalled hearing something on the open channel at 12:19. It was not words, it was just breathing, fast breathing, then it stopped. Night came early behind the storm. At base camp, Dorje was already gearing up to go back. He knew where she had been heading. He did not know if she was still alive. Dorje Tamang left Camp 3 at 2:15 in the morning with 2 other Sherpas, Pemba Dorje and Nima Wangchu, and a rope bag that weighed 11 kilograms. The wind was still running at 50 miles per hour. Their headlamps cut maybe 2 meters into the dark before the blowing snow swallowed the light whole. They moved by memory, by feel, by the kind of knowledge that only comes from climbing the same mountain more times than you can easily count. Dorje had been on this exact stretch of ridge 9 times before. He knew every rock. He knew every fold in the ice. He moved toward the bergschrund, not because he had a GPS signal, but because he knew in his body where she would have fallen. He found her at 4:48 in the morning. She was 11 hours into the cold. She was wedged on the ice ledge 6 meters down, half sitting, half lying against the crevasse wall. Her oxygen mask had been pulled to one side. Her left leg was bent at an angle that made Pemba look away. Her gloves were gone. Nobody ever found them. Both hands were the color and texture of old candle wax, but she was breathing. Short, ragged pulls of air that fogged faintly in the beam of Dorje's headlamp. Dorje later told investigators in a very quiet voice that her eyes were open, but she was not seeing him. He said he held her hand and told her help was coming. He did not know if she heard anything he said. Extracting her from the crevasse took 90 minutes. They built a snow anchor above the lip, ran a mechanical advantage rope system down to the ledge, and lifted her in a makeshift harness while Nima guided her body away from the ice wall to prevent further injury to the fractured leg. Every movement made her moan. That was a good sign. It meant some part of her brain was still registering pain. By 6:30 in the morning, she was out of the crevasse and wrapped in 2 emergency bivouac sacks on the open ridge. The helicopter out of Lukla had been on standby since midnight. The pilot, Captain Roshan Khatri, made his first approach at 7:15. The wind threw the aircraft sideways 40 meters from the landing zone, and he aborted. He came back at 7:52. Same result. Khatri said afterward that he had landed on that mountain in bad conditions before. He said that morning was something different. The gusts were completely unpredictable. He said he had made 3 attempts. Each time he thought he had it, the mountain said no. On the ground, Pemba was giving Brielle bottled oxygen from his own supply. Her core temperature, measured with the expedition's field thermometer, was 31 degrees Celsius. Severe hypothermia. Her pulse was faint and irregular, but it was there. At 8:44, during a brief lull between gusts, Katri brought the helicopter down hard and fast onto a narrow ice shelf 40 meters below the rescue site. The team had 7 minutes to load her before the next system hit. They used 6 of them. As the helicopter banked away from the ridge and dropped toward lower altitude, Dorje watched it go from the slope above. One of the base camp medics radioed up with a status update 2 minutes into the flight. Brielle's pulse had dropped. They were administering chest compressions at 19,000 feet in an aircraft the size of a large car, above clouds that had swallowed the mountain completely. The next 12 hours would determine everything. Brielle Harmon died at 11:23 in the morning on May 18, 2023, on a folding medical cot inside the base camp emergency tent at 17,600 feet. The medics had gotten her pulse back twice during the helicopter descent. Both times her heart had restarted, held for a few minutes, and then simply stopped again, like a phone that keeps losing signal. The third time it stopped, it did not come back. She was 44 years old. The medical examiner's report, filed 12 days later in Kathmandu, listed the primary cause of death as severe hypothermia compounded by traumatic cardiac arrest. Contributing factors included a fractured left femur, advanced high-altitude cerebral edema, bilateral frostbite to both hands, and acute exhaustion. She had been exposed to minus 38 degrees Celsius temperatures for 11 hours. Her core temperature at the time of rescue had been 31 degrees Celsius. By the time the helicopter landed at base camp, it was 29 degrees Celsius. The body, the report noted, had simply run out of things to give. The investigation that followed was thorough, and for Summit Prestige expeditions, deeply uncomfortable. Investigators pulled every document, the medical screening files, the radio logs, the weather advisory records, and the expedition schedule. What they found made the climbing community furious. On the morning of May 17th, the Nepal Meteorological Forecasting Division had issued 3 separate weather advisories, warning of an accelerated pressure system moving toward the Khumbu region. Summit Prestige had received all 3. Their operations director had read all 3. The guided summit push proceeded anyway because 3 other clients were also attempting the summit that day, and the company's weather cancellation policy would have triggered full refunds for all of them. 4 climbers. Combined booking value, just over $1 million. The weather warnings were filed and ignored. There was a second finding that hit harder. During Brielle's Lobuche acclimatization climb, the expedition medic had flagged her blood oxygen saturation as borderline and had recommended a mandatory rest day before any further ascent. That recommendation existed in writing. Summit Prestige cleared her to continue without the rest day. The document showing the clearance was signed by the same operations director who had read the weather warnings. The case was recorded in the Himalayan database's incident registry as a preventable fatality resulting from commercial expedition negligence. Summit Prestige expeditions had their guiding license suspended for 1 season. Nepal's Ministry of Tourism subsequently tightened the medical clearance requirements for commercial Everest clients, mandating independent physician sign-off for any climber showing borderline acclimatization results. The changes came too late for Brielle. Greg Mullen, her climbing partner, gave a single statement to investigators and then stopped talking to the press entirely. In it, he said she was funny and loud, and she made everyone at base camp laugh every single day. He said he wanted people to remember that before they remembered everything else. Her GoPro footage was reviewed by the Nepal Mountaineering Association and used in a mandatory guide safety briefing distributed to all licensed expedition companies operating on Everest. The final 22 minutes of the recording, with Brielle alone in the whiteout, oxygen mask loose, 1 glove missing, waving at nothing, became the most watched clip in that briefing's history. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was ordinary. Because she looked, in those last coherent minutes, exactly like someone who still believed everything was going to be fine. Everest has claimed over 330 lives since 1953. 1 in every 60 climbers who attempt the summit does not come home. 90% of those deaths happen on the descent, not the ascent, when the body is already emptied out and the summit high has worn off. And the mountain is still exactly as dangerous as it was going up. None of those statistics mattered to Brielle Harmon when she wired $320,000 to a company that had already decided she was worth more as a paying client than as a person who needed to be told no. She did one Pilates session. She paid $320,000, and in the end, the mountain gave her exactly what it gives everyone who arrives unprepared and refuses to listen: nothing. No refund, no second chance, no mercy. Just silence and snow and 27,000 feet of indifferent sky.